Welcome to the Winning Wellness Podcast, where we explore health, wellness, performance, and try to improve not only your quantity of life, but your quality of life. I'm your host, Mitch Schwartzman.
Hi everyone, today we'll be talking about mental health and athletes. And I think we all need to be prepared to keep ourselves feeling well and also be prepared to help others, whether that's sort of leading by example, having helpful suggestions ready, or even guiding them to professionals again. And today is not about substituting for medical advice or professional help. If you or anyone you know you think might need some help, please reach out or maybe provide resources to anyone you think would benefit from it. So this is just to supplement that and to encourage healthy lifestyles, and do not take any of these words as a substitution for professional help. Statistically, mental health is getting actually worse and worse. We're on the rise with depression, anxiety, and other related issues. And I have seen that I've been helping people out with their health and wellness for about 17 years, and I have seen it sort of just become more and more common. I think a part of that is not just the data and the downfall in lifestyle, but also just there's not such a stigma around it. So we are talking about it more and more these days, which is a great thing. However, I think that needs to actually elevate a little bit more to the point that we kind of know, we almost all have like a first aid kit available for times of trouble. So I sort of started to notice that mental health and physical health were related when I was a little punk 18-year-old personal trainer over at Bally Total Fitness. And the way that the facility was developed and the way that the sessions would run, what was really common, like if I was trying to sell somebody personal training, what was really common is that I would take them down on the gym floor and get them sweating and challenge them and kind of test them out, see where their strengths and weaknesses were, and then I would bring them back up into this little kind of glass cubicle, this little tiny office, and I would start kind of doing my sales pitch on them. And I would say, hey, your goals were this, that, and the other. I saw you did X amount of push-ups today, or you ran the half mile in so many minutes and seconds or whatever. And I would just sort of like be doing my sales pitch, and I'd be talking about all the physical side of things, maybe sprinkling in some nutrition chat in there. And what was really, really common, and again, I'm 18 years old, not that 18-year-olds are punks, but I was just like, I had a bunch more hair on my head, I had no hair on my face, and I would have all these adults, these 30, 40, 50-year-olds in there, and they had just been looking for some help with their fitness. And I'm in there doing my sales pitch, and they would just start crying. And my thought was that, like, I know that I'm a bad salesman, but am I really that bad? Am I so bad that you're going to just be brought to tears right now? And so and it didn't happen once or twice. I mean, we're talking about dozens of times. And as that became more and more prevalent and common, I noticed a pattern, is that the people who would shed some tears during my sales spiel, is it was actually really common for them to follow through and invest and make that purchase to work with a personal trainer. And I believe that is where I formed that bond, that belief. I'm like, oh my gosh, these people, their physical health kind of stinks, but their mental health, their stress levels are through the roof too. So was it the mental load that they were carrying that caused the deterioration in their physical capacity and the addition of extra like pounds of fat around their waistline? Maybe so. Was it the deterioration of their body and their physique and the loss of their youth that was elevating their stress levels? Maybe so. I don't know if it was the chicken or the egg, or just they were both going hand in hand. but it was just super, super obvious to me. And so I sort of just clicked in my brain. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can make these people run and do push-ups till the cows come home. But at some point, I need to develop a skill set in addressing these conversations that they're having with me. And luckily, not out of wisdom, just out of luck, I believe. I just decided, just when people would start to cry and kind of lay things on me and tell me about these hard times that they're having with their spouses and their work situations and things like that, I just made like sort of an immediate decision just to keep my mouth shut. I just basically nodded my head and made little comments. What I later learned was called active listening. But in what reality, I was 18 years old and I was freaking out that these grown-ups were crying to me in this small enclosed space, and it was just super uncomfortable for me at the time. I have since grown. I'm a little bit older. I have experienced many people crying to me and things like that. So it no longer sort of like rocks me on my heels. But at the time, I had no skills. No one prepared me for this. Um, but I know that it happened not only to me and to others because I came up with a phrase in 2006, maybe 2007, where I said, criers are buyers. And years later, I heard multiple other personal trainers use that same phrase. And I know it wasn't because of me. So I just think it's like a law of nature, if you will. So that's where I kind of first saw that the connection. And honestly, like, it just means that self-care is so important. And what are some of the fundamental, easy, not easy, but simple things to do for self-care? Honestly, what do we want to do? We want to eat healthy. It's not only so that we look good, but we feel good and that we perform, right? So we want to eat healthy. We want to manage our stress. And there's a big difference. If you're halfway listening, maybe really dial in right now and listen intently. There's a big difference between managing your stress and managing your stressors. When you are managing your stress, you are doing things like stretching, breathing, maybe listening to like some positive speeches or videos. You're listening to music, you're going on like hikes in the nature, maybe doing some meditation. So that's managing your stress. Managing your stressors is also, it's something that you can manage. You can impact it to an extent. Like managing your stressors would be like pay your bills, get to work on time, do the stuff that's going to help your life flow well. But you can't help if you pop a couple of tires in a bad part of town and you're stranded on the side of the road and you're getting a little bit nervous. You can't help that. You can't help if the boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband decides they want out of the relationship, or they're just not very cooperative within the relationship. There's just things that you can't help if you get sick. Not all the time. So managing your stress is something we can always do. We can always make positive decisions to work on that stress management. We'll talk a little bit more about that today, and we'll talk about that a lot more in the future if you tune into more future episodes. And then the next one is just being physically active. So many of those clients, that general population that I was working with back in the mid 2000s, their stress was through the roof, and their physical movement and their minutes per week of physical activity was deplorable. I mean, we're talking about people who come in, they haven't consciously exercised in years. And so, the bodies are designed to move and to be challenged and things like that. And when you take that away from the body, there's just a cascade of issues. The weight gain, the loss of muscle, but your hormones change, and your self-confidence changes, and it goes. It's not just the physical side. It's not just the physiology. It's not just the psychology. It's just that everything is lost when we stop moving and we stop challenging ourselves. So we really got to keep that in there, whoever you are. So the funny thing is, I went from being a personal trainer at Bally Fitness and a couple of other facilities. And so that was my experience with mental health with the general population. And then next up, I went and actually worked with the St. Louis Rams in 2010. And so this is what I would label an elite population. So these are young men who have physical strength and speed, just like you wouldn't believe. They're paid sometimes millions and millions of dollars for their physical attributes and their abilities on the football field. So even they were not immune to a little bit of like mental health stress. So there's actually something called EUSTRESS, which again, when you pop two flat tires in a bad part of town, that's distress, and that's not so fun. But EUSTRESS would be like winning the lottery or finding $1 million in your mailbox at home. It's a good thing, but it's such a change to your normal day-to-day life that it actually sparks new stress levels. They're positive, they're things that you want, but they actually cause stress because of change. So to throw in like a little bit more fancy terminology, homeostasis, or like your average day-to-day life, could be called allostasis. And an allostatic load, whether it's negative or positive, an allostatic load will draw you out of allostasis. Negative things are called distress, and that brings your allostasis into negative, stressful territory. Your positive things, good changes, maybe it's marriage, maybe it's a job promotion, maybe it's a healthy baby that's arrived in your life, maybe it's a windfall of a lot of money into your bank account. That's an allostatic load into the positive stress zone. These elite football players, they were experiencing an allostatic load of maybe going from a broke college kid, maybe some of them were coming from like a poor backgrounds and families with limited incomes and limited resources, and then overnight they're getting checks with several zeros on them, and they're basically millionaires overnight. So for them, that's an allostatic load that had a lot of like repercussions. So their whole social circle and their family, for some of them, everybody they knew just instantly just turned their hands up asking for a handout, and all the relationships became strained because a lot of those people were just now they had a motive behind the relationship, and there was manipulation going on. So there's some negative things like that, and then also there's job performance. So a lot of these guys were playing at big time college universities, and so they were used to being on ESPN and things like that, but just not the level it is in the NFL with the cameras everywhere and the notoriety. It's just a whole nother level. So even at that level, these guys were coming into the weight room stressed out and a little concerned. And I had a head strength coach then at the time by the name of Rock Gullickson, and he was amazing at managing these guys' stress. So they would come in to have like conversations like you would have with maybe a big brother or a father, and to watch Coach Rock assist them without telling them what to do, to be a listener, that just blew my mind. I thought, I'm going to read the books and I'm going to study the science. So maybe one day I will be able to program and be as good of a strength coach as Coach Rock. But I knew, watching him have those big brother conversations with these athletes, I was like, oh my gosh, like I have no idea how to be that kick butt at talking to athletes, and I don't want to wait another 30 years to grow that skill set. So what I did was actually, because of him and some other experiences and some other models I had in my life, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get a master's degree in counseling. Like Coach Rock, he might not call it counseling, he might call it coaching, but he's counseling these guys. He's having hard conversations with them and helping them kind of like grow their perspective and gain insight and make wiser, healthier decisions and things like that. So very inspirational from him. And so just keep in mind that even these very fortunate NFL players have their own set of stressors, although it's positive, and a lot of us would like to take that on. It's just something to keep in mind. So, um, moving on from there, in 2011, excuse me, there was an NFL lockout. And so there was a little bit of a strike within the league. So what that meant is that there was no work for me to do. And so I sort of moved on and went to Linwood University and started pursuing started doing grad school, and eventually got a master's degree in professional counseling, as well as human performance, as well as teaching. But counseling was the first one I started. I left it for the other stuff, and then I came back and finished it and accomplished it as my final master's degree as of this recording. So, but my time after I was done with the Rams, that was when I really realized that, oh, this sport coaching, working with teams, I really like that. So I loved personal training. It was great. But the team aspect was just a different animal and was something that really intrigued me and interested me. And so from 2011 until now, it's the end of 2023, I've been working primarily with collegiate teams. And so in that time, there's a few things that I've noticed that will sort of add stress to their lives or be sort of common issues. First, right off the bat, say probably the biggest, newest animal on the scene is social media. Imagine, I like the phrase that comparison is the thief of joy. I think that one goes to Teddy Roosevelt. I'm sure other people have said it, but comparison is the thief of joy. So these young people are going to get on the computer and they're looking at people who are going on maybe like once in a lifetime vacations, and they're posting these amazing photos and videos online. And meanwhile, like the student athlete is like stuck. They feel like they're stuck going to like school and maybe like a job they don't like, and then they're training on a team and maybe they're not even like starting on the team, and they just compare their life to these showcased photos and videos and things like that they're watching online. So there's that comparison that creates a little bit of envy, and then that envy leads to depression, basically. And then with the social media, you also have to think some of these young people who are very, very busy. They have classes, they have homework, they have relationships, they have practice, they have competition. They're busy, but they are giving away maybe 2, maybe 4 hours of their day every day to just scrolling on their phones. It used to be Facebook. Now I think Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, or I think Twitter just got renamed to X, is what it is right now. They're giving away so much time. And so time management, so social media is probably the number one thing to kind of talk about and be aware of. And then time management. So not only because of social media, but because of everything else. They're going to be busy, and they're going to have just reduced time as a resource. And so they're going to be in a hurry a lot of times. And if you're watching this, you probably understand that can be a little bit exhausting, is to constantly be busy and constantly have to be thinking about your next move and your next step. So time management, so providing time management ideas and techniques and little resources is a good idea. A lot of these student athletes are young people. They might be the first time away from home and away from mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, whoever, and they're going to start maybe ramping up their experimenting with drugs and alcohol. And so that's a common issue, to talk to them like adults, but also to educate them on safe practices and how it's going to detriment their training and their performance. There's a little bit of a difference in the conversation from maybe if you're familiar with the DARE program that 10-year-olds are being exposed to versus 18 to 22-year-olds. The conversation is different, but it should still be a part of the rotation of discussions that you have. These student athletes it's their first time Maybe they're just getting old enough that their grandparents are starting to pass away. Their social circle is getting big enough that they're starting to actually have friends pass away. Um, a lot of them are experiencing that for the first time. It's that loss. It's a common stressor that will lead to other issues. So, it's just important that we have a support system in place, and that we tell them ahead of time how to get these resources. So, um, the stress management skills and techniques, as well as knowing where the counselors are on campus, or a phone number to call, or a website to visit. Knowing that stuff ahead of time is like knowing how to swim before you're drowning. Like, yes, lots of people have the funny story of being thrown into the pool and just learning how to swim. That's great and cute and all. Well, it's a little scary. It's not how I'm doing it with my kids, but we don't really need to take that approach with mental health crisis, right? Or mental health issues. So, just talking about it, having resources available seems to be a pretty good idea. These student athletes, you'd think that they would have, because they come in to the college setting and they're exercising for their sport training, and they have a cohort and a peer group of people. You think that they have a social network that was strong and sound, and that they're going to be physically healthy and well, and that's actually going to promote health. But actually, the statistics tell us that those student athletes will have more mental health issues than non-athlete students, just the general student body. And so you look at the exhaustion that comes with training, the pressure and stress that comes with being on a team, the time management and resources from just being busy training. Those things just add up and pile up, and it actually nudges our student athletes in the wrong direction a little bit. So that was one thing that kind of caught me off guard, and is still kind of hard to believe, but the data is there. So as a part of my string, I'm not going to do the whole timeline on this video. As part of my string of education and experiences, I actually did get my professional counseling master's degree, and as a part of that master's degree, I interned in 2 different facilities. One was actually in the college setting with student athletes and also general student body, but the other place that I worked at as a counselor was actually in a play therapy facility with children ages 4 to 18. So while we're talking about, we talked about the general population when I was a personal trainer. We talked about the elite population with the St. Louis Rams, NFL. And then we talked about the student athlete population, which is mostly inundated with Linwood. But because we're talking about some of these other things, I thought I would just talk about some takeaways that I saw with children. So let's call this the youth population. So a few of my takeaways would be, if you are a mother or father, play with your children, but give them the opportunity to direct the play. So maybe sitting down and teaching them all the rules of Monopoly is not the way to go, versus letting them use their imaginations about, the dinosaur is a baby and you have to swaddle the dinosaur and sing songs. I don't know, sing songs to it or whatever it is. So, playing with them, but giving them the chance to be the leader. And so that develops a little bit of a relationship. It lets them use their imagination. It teaches them how to play. A lot of kids right now they're losing their skill set of just playing and having fun. So the top 2 reasons for that jump to mind would be parents that go in and they want to direct, and they want to say, oh, this is how you play. This is the game that we're going to play. Here are the rules. Or the parents that just hand them an iPhone or an iPad and let the technology take the load off their plate, which is totally understandable, but not ideal over and over again, and not in extended time periods. And then my second tip for parents, just based on what I saw in play therapy facilities, is beware of perfectionism. So quite a few of the kids that we would see were actually either mom or dad would be a perfectionist, and the child, think about like a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old child trying to do things perfectly. Well, they're like 6 or 10, so like honestly, they're just gonna screw things up. Like that's what you're supposed to do as a child. You're not supposed to be fantastic at coloring inside the lines or knowing everything in the classroom or scoring perfect scores on your classroom, tests and things like that. And so one thing we saw is just a lot of kids that would just come in and they would have very, very high expectations for themselves, which means that basically every day they were disappointed in themselves and frustrated with their lives. So take that for what it's worth, but try to just encourage. We have a saying that our kids in my house that our kids picked up in preschool, and they just say it's okay to make a mistake, and so that's something that we say on a pretty regular basis around here. So, and then the last one, it ties into everything else I've been talking about, is feed the kids healthy food and get them physically active. So these in the play therapy facility, think about what I was talking about when I was at Bally Total Fitness, is that these people would come in, they'd been eating poorly, not moving, not taking care of themselves, and they felt really poorly, enough that they were going to be paying a personal trainer to just try and help their bodies feel better. Well, most of these clients, and I'm saying most, not all, but most of these clients who were coming in, physically inactive, poor diet, poor stress management. And that might be the kid, but was almost exclusively the parents, is that they were not coming from, and I'm not saying they need to be like little miniature Olympians or whatever, but just the healthy lifestyle was not there. And because I was new to counseling, when I was doing this counseling is 2017, I was new to counseling, just finishing up a bunch of my formal education on the subject. I was new to counseling, but I was a veteran. I was 11 years into personal training and strength and conditioning. So, if you think about handy hammer syndrome, if all you have is a hammer, everything you see is a nail. That's what I was with physical fitness, is that I was like, oh, you're depressed and you're 50 pounds overweight and your diet stinks and you don't go out in sunshine and get collect sunlight and you don't have, fun doing physical activities. I was like, well, I only know a couple of tricks with counseling, but I know a lot of tricks with physical health and wellness. So, I had supervisors, and I kind of cleared it with them and talked to them about how I wanted to bring in suggestions for self-care. So if you ever hear about like cognitive behavior therapy, that's one of the behaviors that might make a big impact, is just taking better care of your body so that your mind feels a little bit better. So for whatever reason, that is just kind of several years ago, that was just pretty lost on that community in my limited experience. I think we're going to kind of wrap it up here. I want to list a couple of bullet points and also talk about 2 or 3 books really quick. Okay, so what are the common takeaways, whether you're general population, your youth, your elite, your student athlete in college setting? You got to eat right so that you feel good, you perform well, and maybe it even helps you look good. So that's not the cure, but that seems to help. You have to get good sleep. Sleep is probably one of the biggest things we can do to take care of ourselves. It's hard to have a good day after a bad night, which is, I didn't make that up. I forgot where I heard it, but it's hard to have a good day after a bad night. If you're looking for a book to read on sleep, I highly recommend The Sleep Revolution by Arianna Huffington. That's a great one. Also, Matthew Walker has a book, Why We Sleep. That's a good one as well. I have it somewhere around the house, but I couldn't find it, so I didn't want to flash it on the screen. What else we can do? Oh gosh, I kind of went back and forth there. So let's do the common takeaways. Eat right. Oh, we did sleep. Manage your stress. Okay, manage your stress. If you want to read a really awesome book on stress, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, that is just chock full of little studies and anecdotes, and it gives you some of the science behind what the heck is going on when we get stressed out, and how like maybe like a fender bender can cause us to get a cold, like a cold or an infection, because it affects your immune system, and how stress over and over time um, causes like full on disease and issues and things like that. A smaller story would be like student athletes. There's 2 weeks every semester that they have a spike and increase in physical injuries. It's the week of midterms and the week of finals. So that stress that you get, it goes from your brain to your body, and vice versa. They, okay, back to my bullet list. People need to manage stress. They need to learn what stress is and what it feels like in their body. So that's called like introspection. So like children and adults need quiet time to feel their feelings. If little kids are always busy holding iPads and pressing their nose up to the TV to watch whatever, like not Sesame Street, but like whatever the new age Sesame Street is. If they're always doing that, they're always busy, they're always playing, they're on like 3 sports teams at a time. They are not going to learn introspection. They're not going to learn how to feel their feelings. So a little bit of quiet time, especially with children, can go a long way. Let's see, stay active, be physically well, take care of your body, but also prioritize recovery. So remember our student athletes in college, how they have more mental health issues than non-athletes? Those student athletes are training, they're physically well, but a lot of them do so much they've got all the fire but none of the ice. So they're not doing the yoga stretches, they're not going on walks, they're not having quiet time, they're not letting their body unwind, because it's a nighttime practice followed by a morning practice followed by like a weight training session, and a lot of them just they don't undo the stress that is done on their body by their sport. Speaking of physical activity, Spark is it's the revolutionary new science of exercise and the brain. So here's some of the background science on basically why you got to go do cardio and how that will change your psychology and actually the physical structure of your brain. It's going to adjust hormones and help do away with anxiety and depression. And the latest science on that says that exercise is blowing so many not psychotropic, but psychological based drugs out of the water. So all the pills that they're giving people for anxiety and depression, and those people aren't exercising, it could be, a lot of the data says that some exercise would be more beneficial. Again, that's not advice. I'm not telling anybody to get rid of your medicine. However, if you're taking medicine and you're not exercising, you might want to talk to your doctor and kind of like maybe pursue a little experiment. Again, that is not medical advice. That is, take that with a grain of salt. It's worked for some people. The data says that it works for some people. Could possibly work for you. And then my last two bullets is that we need to be prepared to not only provide help, but to provide people with resources to get help. So not only to just be able to apply a little bit of first aid in addressing people, like how little 18, 19-year-old Mitch was like a deer in the headlights when people were crying to me. Maybe to grow your skill set in having hard conversations and being able to do some active listening and things like that. And then also to have a list of phone numbers that people can call if they're having a terrible day or they're having the 100th terrible day in a row. Some mental health professionals. So that's my list for today. Again, This is the Winning Wellness Podcast, and I just hope everybody is able to use this information to be well and win their wellness.
Thank you so much for listening to our Winning Wellness Podcast. If you have any questions or suggestions for podcast guests or topics, you can submit those through YouTube comments. You can message me on Instagram. My handle is Mitch Schwartzman, or you can email me at coachmitchschwartzman@gmail.com.